I've had issues with my feet since I was younger. I kind of grew up being pretty active and doing things as normal as youngsters do, but I had discomfort in my feet from a young age, and I was diagnosed as having a bit of a long one, but talocalcaneal middle facet coalition, which basically means your heel and ankle bones had a fusion. So I didn't have a great range of movement in my feet, and so I ended up, as you'll probably hear a lot from a lot of people in your community, had the orthotic route to begin with, and then I had operations on my feet through my early 20s. I was having like taking painkillers when playing sport and having injections in the ankle and that sort of thing. And when we started Bahé, as we'll get into, like, it was really looking at how the body works. As I kind of learned more through that process, kind of moved more into this sort of natural footwear thing, and it really made a lot of sense. When I was having work done on my feet, it wasn't enough really on reflection now about, you know, how are other joints, like how's your toes, how are your hips, how's your strength, like how's your technique when you're moving, that sort of thing. I feel quite grateful to have a background that's nature's been a big part of it, sport, like the engineering side, but then also, although it's been not ideal for me, like difficulties with my feet, it's definitely helped me to sort of appreciate more, and helped my journey towards where we are now, I think.
Welcome to the Restore to Explore podcast from the Foot Collective. We're on a mission to empower humans to restore their natural health and function from the ground up, so we can all explore movement and life with freedom and confidence.
Okay, hello everyone. I thank you for joining us today. I'm Ruth, and I'm here hosting a conversation with co-founder Alex Ward from Bahé Footwear. And at TFC, we have a very large community of a digital community of over 18,000 members who are at all different stages of restoring and maintaining their foot health in order to explore their lives and enjoy movement more freely and fully. They're a pretty sophisticated crew, and they're always curious to hear about the people behind the story, behind the shoe brands that we recommend to them. So thank you, Alex, for being here with me today to do that.
Thanks so much. No, I'm really grateful to be able to have the opportunity. Like, I really admire what you guys are doing. So yeah, it'd be great to have the chat.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this chat today. So I want to start because when I received the Revive, which is one of your two models of shoes, in the box, there was this really great package insert. And there's a quote next to a photograph of you and Kishan, and it says, "The best way to begin reconnecting humanity's heart, mind, and soul to nature is for us to share our individual stories." And that is by J. Drew Lanham, who I'm not familiar with, but the quote obviously resonates for TFC because we really believe in the power of sharing our stories in order to help each other grow and learn. So why don't we begin with your background and your path, becoming a shoe designer, and then your path to actually designing the Revive, which is the brand that we, the model that you have that we are recommending.
Yeah, great. So I think a real key part to all of this for us is the nature element of it. So for me, that was something that was really important for me from my childhood. I was very fortunate to grow up in the countryside, so I spent a lot of time outside in the woods, messing around, swimming in reservoirs, playing football in the field, all that sort of thing. My parents managed a nature reserve, so like I was really lucky to be sort of around nature from an early age. Um,
Mhm.
and another big passion of mine was design. So I was always interested in and making things. My father was an architect, so they're kind of like my two passions really. I studied sports technology at
Mhm.
university, so that was kind of design, human anatomy, engineering, like a mixture of quite a few different elements. Um, so yeah, that's my interest, and I was kind of after studying and kind of progressing into work, I was kind of a little bit uneasy with the idea of creating more product for the world because obviously there's enough stuff out there and really like care about the environment. So I was always keen to work on products which were like well made, long lasting, as sustainable as possible. And so it's all been a kind of a progression from there really. I've been working in footwear for about 15 years or so. like I say, trying to do the best product I could. Always focusing on quality, comfort, although my definition of that has definitely evolved over the last few years as I've learnt more from the work that you guys do in particular. Um, so yeah, I've kind of worked in footwear, doing different projects for a while. Another element for me in my personal story is I've had issues with my feet since I was younger. So I kind of grew up, being pretty active and doing things as normal as youngsters do. But I had discomfort in my feet from a young age, and I was diagnosed as having a bit of a long one, but talocalcaneal middle facet coalition, which basically means your heel and ankle bones had a fusion. So I didn't have a great range of movement in my feet. So I didn't notice too much, but I kind of was a little bit limited with certain things, and so I ended up, as you'll probably hear a lot from a lot of people in your community, had the orthotic route to begin with, and then I had operations on my feet, and then, through like my early 20s, I was having like taking painkillers when playing sport and having injections in the ankle and that sort of thing, and so like I've always been really interested as well about how the body works, how you can kind of improve upon that. So when we started Bahé, as we'll get into, like it was really looking at how the body works, and as I kind of learned more through that process, kind of moved more into this sort of natural footwear thing, and it really made a lot of sense. So yeah, how when I was having work done on my feet, it wasn't enough really on reflection now about how are other joints, like how's your toes, how are your hips, how's your strength, like how's your technique when you're moving, that sort of thing. So it's yeah, I think I feel quite grateful to have a background that's been involved, like nature's been a big part of it, sport, like the engineering side, but then
Mm-hmm.
also, although it's been not ideal for me, like difficulties with my feet, it's definitely helped me to sort of appreciate more, and helped my journey towards where we are now, I think.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting about learning curves, right? Because like what I think it's so like looking at your website, it's like you have two distinct models of shoes. And to me, that does kind of represent a learning curve in your own personal path as a designer. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think it's always good to be like humble as a designer. I think I if you look at the industry generally, I think that the way the world works, brands probably do like more of the same kind of thing. What's sold, what colours been best, what models done best in terms of sales. But I think we're in a really nice position as a small company where we can really follow our learning processes, and if we see opportunities to do things better, we can follow those opportunities, which is exciting for us. So yeah, it's definitely an evolution for us, I think. Yeah, as you alluded to, our first style was more conventional, or like more of a cushion style, which I think the a real key thing for us is we want to help people get outside, and we have technology in our shoes which allows them to be grounded, which I guess we'll touch on. So giving anyone the opportunity to do that is good. I think the transition thing is like it takes effort, doesn't it? And not everyone is ready to do that. But I think the more you can create opportunities to do that, and that's really the intention of our new style, is that it's great for transitioning, and hopefully once you have transitioned, it's still definitely good for a lot of instances. But yeah, it's definitely been an evolution for us, like Kishan and my business partner and myself, like we've both you know we've brought into it, we're transitioning. I think like there's most people you probably speak to say once you start going in that direction, you don't
Mm-hmm.
really tend to go back, do you? So it's definitely been a great opportunity to learn. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've been wearing this shoe for a few weeks on and off, and it's definitely like the quality and the craftsmanship in the shoe itself is really astonishing. Um, so I find myself um, I go barefoot primarily. I would say 80%, 85% of my life. But I am an avid tennis player, and I wear gear. So I wear super, like if we're looking at natural footwear on a spectrum, um, I would call this a robust, shoe for people who need a little extra stability. It's like medium flexibility, but the toe box is super nice and wide, and it has a really great fit. And you said, I think you brought up a good point, which is that not, I mean, people are really at all stages of of learning about what it means to have healthy feet. So I would recommend, so somebody like my grandmother or my neighbor downstairs who has fallen a number of times and who would probably not necessarily dive into an education about what it means to like have your joints in your feet moving. A lot of people just don't care or are at a stage in their life where they're just super conditioned. And so just having something for everyone. And this has been an evolution even for me and my own mindset, being open-minded, like just get out of your shoes and socks and feel the ground beneath you. But that's not really available to everyone, is it? And having a mindset like that. So I appreciate the fact that you can actually see on your website two distinctly different shoes, and that there is something truly for everyone. So I guess I was listening to a conversation that you had with Mac Lyon, our CEO, and I was curious from a design perspective. You said something. I'm gonna quote you, I think, if you don't mind. And it is you said the foot isn't actually considered in the design of the shoe, which is hilarious to me because I come from an anatomy physiology background. I taught anatomy, and like the thing that we always taught our students was design follows function, right? So in the human body. So I think it's interesting if you could say more about that.
Yeah, that wasn't a reflection of our process necessarily. I'd say more of the way that the
No,
industry works. But I
just
think,
just
yeah,
in
yeah, absolutely.
yes.
But um, but yeah, it's true. I think that you know, uh, like the processes are quite well established, I guess, in terms of the way you know brands will plan a range, and we need to have this many Oxfords, this many Gibsons, this many runners, this many trainers, that sort of thing. And then they'll look at colours, and then they'll sort
Mhm.
of look at what shape is good. But its shape is often, I mean, inherently, foot shapes aren't changing significantly, are they? They evolve. If you're going to like a more natural style of movement, then your feet will adapt. But in terms of trends and fashions, that's not, your feet aren't changing in those regards. So that's something that's kind of, that's the shape of the last, and that's changes based upon fashions, which is kind of strange, isn't it? Because that's not really how your feet should be considered. And
Mhm.
trends in terms of sole units. So like there's this thing at the moment of really maximal like chunky soles because that's a bit of a trend. And I find it amazing you see professional athletes, footballers wearing these like £800 fancy trainers with a massive sole, but their feet are their bread and butter, aren't they? And so yeah, it's just,
Mhm.
I guess the way the fashion process works, people do think about things in terms of the comfort, in terms of which should typically be like a consideration of cushioning, padding, that sort of thing around the collar, like, and there's things about like basic shapes which are kind of standards about how it fits around the ankle bone and things like that, which are obviously based upon historical understandings of how feet are. But I think there needs to be like a real reset in terms of like, okay, we've arrived at this point. Is it the right point to be at? And I think for the most part, not necessarily. I think there's definitely opportunities to to do things differently. And often I think there's quite simple things to do. Like we've done some things with this new style which you wouldn't probably notice a difference from the previous one, but like we've made the lacing system a little bit longer and a little bit wider just to give a bit more adjustment. And so lots of little subtle things like that. Something I find amazing is children's shoes. When you look at them, which is obviously so important, and basic things that you could be done, which don't affect the fashion, don't affect fit, but like would just help them to be softer or help them to be a bit more adjustable. And so, I definitely think there's
Mhm.
it needs a bit of a step back. Like companies are big generally, aren't they? And they've got lots of different layers, and they've got people planning, buying, and merchandising and development and saving money here and there and all that
Mhm.
sort of thing. And through all those processes, you can kind of lose a bit of sight of what the point is and what the use case is. So yeah, it's been a a really great experience to do this with Bahé and us today, really reflect on everything. And we've taken our time over this as well. We don't have like timelines that we're
Hmm.
having to work to. So we've spoken to as many experts as we can. We've kind of lived through it ourselves as well in terms of the product and the transition, which I think is good. Like I think you can I suppose in any line of work you can get a bit maybe complacent, I suppose, and you don't have, let's say, like fresh eyes on things, and or like like you get so used to what you're doing that you just go through like the motions of doing it and designing and the process. But like
Yeah,
I think that
for
some
sure.
like the fact that Kishan and myself were like also transitioning and also speaking to these experts, it's like, okay, we went back to being like beginners in something, so we were experiencing that as well, and that made us ask a lot more questions during our process. So yeah, it's been good to do that, and yeah, definitely good to put the foot at the center of the shoe design, which is well how it should be, clearly.
Yeah. So what's your own personal foot health journey like these days? Does it follow the same path as I mean, you've been in shoe design, did you say, for 15 years?
Yeah.
So you have followed, I mean, you have a small company now, and it's interesting because you have dealt with your own foot issues. So what's it like for you with your path and your own personal health of your feet?
Yeah, it's definitely. I can obviously notice a significant difference, not just my feet, but like throughout like my posture. I don't. You can only see the top half of me, and
Mhm.
probably most people can only hear me. But like I stand at my desk now. I think that's really helped my posture, and it's helped like my neck as much as anything. Like it's. I used to. I've got two screens, and I'm looking at different screens, and when you're sat at a chair, you're twisting, whereas like just being up, like standing means you're more dynamic. So that's
Mhm.
definitely helped. Yeah, like strength from my glutes, my legs has definitely improved. My feet are there too. They're improving. I think it's a continuous thing, isn't it? I probably the biggest setback I had was
Yeah.
my Achilles along the way, which I guess is a regular thing where people get a bit overexcited. I saw a trail in a wood, ran through it, didn't stop as soon as I should have done probably, and so I kind of put myself back a little bit. So there's a bit about being disciplined, following a process, which I could have done a bit more, but yeah, definitely working towards where I want to be, and my my style of movement has definitely adapted a lot as well. Like I was very much like a heel striker in terms of my running technique, and I studied, like I said, I studied sports technology, and when we used to look at papers about biomechanics, that was how people ran in the papers. It's like it was just considered the norm, really, which is again
Yeah.
like strange, having learnt more now. And so yeah, that's how I used to run, and now it's like, okay, right, to to use your body properly, to have the tripod landing, you have to really adapt that. And so yeah, that's been a process, and I've definitely really adapted the way I move in that regard now, which is great. So yes, it's definitely coming together. It's something that's like a journey, isn't it? And you always kind of progress on, but feeling happy with where I've got to so far.
Yeah. Your company is small. How many people in it's you and Kishan primarily. Um, and then
Yeah.
when we say small company, what is the definition of a small company?
Well, you've described most of it. So yeah, Kisha and I are the founders. We do have support on different roles. So my wife's an accountant, so that helps having someone who's knowledgeable about numbers and can make sure we do the right things and we're careful. We have support, yeah, on various things, graphic design and different aspects. But yeah, and so yeah, people muck in when we have trade shows and all that sort of thing. So that's really good. Um, I'm really lucky to have a close relationship with the manufacturer as well. So when you're saying about the quality of the shoes, I can't take too much credit for that. Like I design them. Like it kind of is a result of the hard work from the guys there. So I'm lucky to have a long term relationship with them. We worked together for about 10 years or so. So it's like a big team
Oh,
effort at that end
nice.
as well throughout the whole development and production process. So yeah, it's small, it's spread out, but yeah, we try to use that to our advantage really, because like I say, the manufacturers is really good. They work with like other really high quality brands. The the suppliers further down the supply chain in terms of the soles and the uppers and whatnot, they work with really great brands as well. So we can handle the quality side of it fine. And I think the advantage we have as a small company is that, we're the ones designing the shoes. We're also the ones replying to Instagram messages and customer services and everything like that. So we can really take on board people's feedback, suggestions. We can be quite nimble as a company and hopefully move quickly. So yeah, this stage we're using it to our advantage, even if we're feeling a bit tired at times as well.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you because, personally, and I can probably speak on behalf of our community that, small companies that have still keep it's necessary, right, to grow. Like I'm not trying to say that growth isn't important, and yet there's like a tension of always like kind of writing what the fine line is of like taking out the really human aspect that small companies really give to uh, their communities, and what seems like is sort of missing from our human culture today, in my opinion. So I appreciate the small companies where we get to have conversations with the co-founders. Now I've done podcasts with big, like very large companies. It's very hard to get to the person or the two people who initially that was the brainchild of those people. And that just there's something that happens in the human spirit when you're that far removed from the products that you're buying, which is a whole other conversation, right? So as long as we can, we'll support small, locally owned businesses as much as possible, and also recognizing that also small businesses need to grow to like feed children and like live life and have like a living wage that makes for a good quality of life. I noticed on your website too that you have so at TFC, which stands for the Foot Collective, but it also stands for our values: truth, fun, and community. You have running, design, and planet, and it looks like that may be an indicator of like what Bahé's value system or mission stands for. Can you just say a little bit about like your mission going forward as a company, and like what those running, design, and planet sort of in any necessary order, or tell me more about that?
Well, I think they're quite interactive, to be honest. So like we talk a lot about reconnecting with nature and yeah, having a lower impact on the planet. And so um, I think that yeah, a lot of that goes hand in hand. Like we design trying to be as sustainable as possible. Obviously, there's challenges when you're trying to do a shoe that's performing well and it's lightweight and that sort of thing. And we worked really hard on that, trying to find that balance between the weight and the performance and whatnot. But we always try to use as much as possible plant-based materials where we can. We use 65% natural rubber in the outsole. We use 5% sugarcane in the midsole, 70% sugarcane in the footbed. We have organic cotton laces. Uh, where we can't use plant-based materials, which when we have tried, is in the upper. So we use recycled materials in the upper and the lining as well. So I think that's really important. That's like
Amazing.
a big focus for us. And I think when you talk about the differences between big and small companies, I think the sustainability angle is really a big one in that, because the more steps you have in a company, the more opportunities there are to go, you know what, we could save 10 cents if we change that to a completely plastic material. And there's just cost savings and decisions. And with a small company, we've got complete accountability for that, which is great. So we set out and we said, look, we don't really shout too much about the sustainability. It really matters to us personally, but there's a lot of messages to say. So we don't. It's not probably the first thing we talk about, but it's something that like philosophically for us, it's completely key to what we want to do. So from a product design point of view, it's really significant. But also, I think beyond the product, the most important thing for us is to recognize the importance of the planet to us. And I think just getting out in nature is the most important part of that. So, like when you're out in the woods or you're at the beach or whatever, you have that feeling of like, I have all I need. Like this is what, I'm not looking for more technology or, gadgets. When you're there, you're happy. And, when you see children at the beach or like I said, the woods, they're there and they're immersed and they're present. And so like, trying to create products that really align with that is quite key to us. So I think the idea of exercising within nature is fundamental to what we're doing. So we'll continue to make products for that, and then always try to make them as sustainably as possible, whilst given the performance that's required. And something I think that's really nice about more natural styles of shoes and this the community is that the product allows people to inherently move and act more naturally, and therefore they're more versatile as well, which I think is like a sort of a hidden element of the sustainability question. Because we get a lot of people say, is this shoe for running, is this shoe for walking? And it's like, well, it's for whatever you want to do in it, because you can we've had people obviously doing those two things, but also ultimate frisbee, CrossFit, like all these different things. And I think that's a really nice sort of byproduct of creating a product that allows people to move more naturally, is that they can use it for so many more things. So like I've been obviously wearing our shoes, the Revive, the last year or so, and I've barely worn anything else, because you can just wear it for whatever you're doing. So I think that's a really exciting thing that we've sort of found from entering this space as well.
We wanted to take a quick break from the episode to let you know about our ultimate free foot health resource. If you're listening, you've probably already started the journey towards improving your foot and movement health, but if you're still wearing conventional shoes most of the time, that's anything cushioned, heeled, narrow or rigid, it's kind of like taking one step forward and two steps back. Knowing what shoe is right for you though can be super confusing. That's why we made the Guide to Foot Freedom. We've taken everything our team of foot health experts have learned over the years and synthesized it into one handy manual, packed with all you need to know about unleashing the natural power of your foundation. You'll learn how to understand your feet, the truth about modern footwear, the 5 F's for finding natural footwear, plus a step-by-step guide with training videos to help you assess your foot function and improve it, so you can safely and seamlessly transition into shoes that will finally give your feet freedom. The best part is, like I said, it's absolutely free. Just head to thefootcollective.com and click Learn to find the free ebook, The Guide to Foot Freedom. You'll find the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, it's true, right? So like we talk about this a lot, about how originally when shoes were like being designed for sports and as gear or tools for sport, they also appealed to the aesthetic appealed to people. So we wear our athletic gear around in our daily lives. And so, yeah, so I don't own a car. I haven't owned a car in 15 years. And I live in rural, like kind of not completely rural, but a small sort of city that is, that doesn't even have like a real public transportation solid infrastructure. So what I do or don't wear on my feet, does have to, it kind of has to be across all the different activities that I do. And so I find myself trying to, wear something to a wedding that I would probably also wear on a run and have it look nice. And I actually have been able to do this with some of the natural shoes. Now, this wouldn't have always been the case. We have so many more options in natural footwear now, more than ever before, and it only seems to be ramping up. But I wore the Revive out with a dress. I'm just going to go lady fashion here for a second on you, Alex, so just bear with me.
Okay.
But I wore it with an A-line skirt and like a 50s swing top and a little hat, and it was so cute, and I got a lot of compliments. So just trying to be creative with shoes that I could either kick off and play barefoot, or walk comfortably down a path where you're being watched, let's say like at a wedding, being ushered into like an outdoor wedding or something. I recently, I just have to tell you this story. I recently went to my husband's, to a funeral where I decided to wear a pair of shoes that I would not normally wear. It was the one last pair of Italian sort of espadrilles that had like a wider toe box, and I thought, oh, I'm going to give these a shot. So I started to walk, and there was a procession that was we were taking the casket to the burial site, and I had my outfit on, and the shoe lace that wrapped around my ankles snapped, and before that, for the last 2 hours of wearing the shoe, my foot was crunched in there and it felt so uncomfortable. And so that was the decision I made at that point, because then I kind of like limped and faked it through this, funeral procession to try to I couldn't concentrate on paying respects to the grandmother because my feet were all effed up in my shoes. And so the next event I went to, I did the same thing, but I wore the Revives as like my fashion statement. And I was so comfortable because I could focus on what I was doing. I could walk. But then when we got home, I could still play, basketball with the boys in the driveway. So, I think that I don't know why I went off on that tangent, but it's just so important to be able to have the shoes that you can do all those things, and especially be outside, right? So you were making the point about taking a shoe and making it so that people are encouraged to be out in nature with it. And just being outside, in nature, yes, the best of all, but even just being outside in the world and being able to move naturally like a human would move is just kind of like, it's novel. It's strangely novel in modern culture.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to illustrate that with my with my remembrances.
Sure. No, I agree.
And
Yeah, yeah. I think it's good to create obviously product that allows people to move in nature, and so we've done that with different elements of the shoe in terms of grip and like the panels that are water resistant and things like that. But also we have the grounding element, so the shoes are like electrically conductive as if you were
yeah,
barefoot on the earth, which is probably the most unique element of them. And I think that's a really nice thing about helping people to like think differently about how they act outside as well. So like taking a different route maybe to be on a natural surface and just being aware of your surroundings. I think the more you can do that, that engagement with nature is so healthy for you, like physically obviously, but also mentally, like to just be engaged with nature and just notice those little things, slow down a little bit. I think that's one of the few positives that probably people had over the last few years during COVID, when there's lockdowns and everything slowed down. People are like, okay, you spent more time in your garden, you noticed that the birds were migrating a certain time of year and the bees were coming out of their like we have little mining bees where we live, and they're like burrowing their way out, and things that you notice, these little small things. I think that's so healthy for you. So yeah, maybe it's a
yeah.
bit of a leap to maybe say your shoes help you do that, but I think that we've definitely had that as feedback from our customers, because of this grounding element that people, are engaging that bit more. So that's a really nice element.
Do you want to say a little bit more about the technology? Because that was one thing I'm not familiar. I wasn't familiar with grounding technology in a shoe. I mean, I had heard of it, but because I'm barefoot a majority of the time, it never really occurred to me. But I will say that I could feel a difference. Like I wear the Ultra Solstice, which I really love, and that's the best comparison I can kind of make to the Revive in the way of like the cushioning and like the feel of the shoe, like the robust nature of the shoe. And so when I went out, I was like, I don't know if I can tell a difference. But then I did some comparisons of like other shoes that don't have the technology that the shoe has. And I don't know anything deeply about grounding technology, but I do know that I felt a difference. And I guess like it was so subtle for me because I'm not, it was just so subtle. I just felt comfortable. And that's what I'll say. Like I just, again, wasn't aware so much of, wasn't so conscious about the shoe. Whereas like in other sort of unnatural footwear or shoes that don't have this technology, I'm aware of. And even some of my best, most minimal or barefoot style shoes, I'm keenly aware of like the feeling of the rubber underneath there. Like if I have like a 3 to 5 millimeter stack height, it feels great. I mean, I can feel the ground beneath me, but I can't really feel the ground beneath me. So do you want to say a little bit more about the insole or anything about like the process of how you have
Yeah,
designed the
for sure.
shoe for this technology?
Yeah, so it's really interesting to get your feedback there. Yeah, so it's quite an early thing for us during the process of creating the brand. We wanted to create products to help people optimize their human performance and not just athletic performance, but like holistic health. And so like grounding was a really interesting element of that for us. It's something that Kishan and I both like done ourselves in terms of being barefoot outside. I'm quite close to the coast here, luckily, so I'm able to swim in the sea every so often. And so we'd experienced it. And we also like read a lot of the studies about it, and there's a lot of resource out there which is really good. There's lots of like deep dives and podcasts and whatnot explaining more in terms of the biology, and also how the earth has a negative charge and all the processes around that. So there's loads of fascinating stuff out there for people to dive into. But yeah, we wanted to try and put that into a shoe, because obviously if you can be barefoot, like, so this is something we've kind of said from the start, like if you can be barefoot, better, and that's with regard to the grounding thing. But obviously it completely aligns with the like what you're doing as well, because from a foot strength perspective, if you can be barefoot, then fantastic. But outdoors, those opportunities can be a bit limited, can't they? Just because practicality, is it clean in certain places? Are you moving from one environment to another? So obviously, of course, if you can be, then you should be. But our idea was that we create these shoes which had that were electrically conductive, so that you can just be grounded whenever you're outside if you're on a natural surface. So just to create those extra opportunities. So if you're already exercising outdoors, which already has more benefits than exercising indoors, you can then also stack on top that you can be grounded as well. So in terms of the technology, we basically the issue with people not being grounded is that normally people are either indoors in a car or wearing footwear which is insulated, and pretty much all shoes would be insulated from the ground because rubber is an insulator, EVA is an insulator. Theoretically, leather can be conductive, but realistically, when it's dry, it's not a fantastic conductor. So we had to kind of re-engineer a running shoe or a performance shoe to have the characteristics to be grounded. So we wanted to do that without compromising on performance at all. So we kind of have a series of different elements. So the outsole rubber, we have a conductive additive of that. So any part of the rubber that then touches the ground would be conductive. Then the midsole, so that's the white layer in between. We have some small cuts in that.
Just for like education purposes, that if anybody is listening, like this is the sole. All of this is conductive, except for that little green triangle.
Except for the green. The green is to show you what's going on, but it's it's the black bit that's actually conductive. But if you can't see, the green bits are
Remember,
very small
I thought when we
elements,
first talked,
yeah.
When Alex and I first talked about this, I thought it was only the little green triangle that was the conductive portion. I just thought, oh my gosh, naively, I was like, oh, it's going in through that little portal right there.
Yeah. You have to land very accurately for that
period
of time. Yeah, so the whole sole is all connected up. And then we have a like slots cut in the midsole, very small slots, so you wouldn't feel anything underneath your feet. And there's a loop of conductive webbing, so like a fabric ribbon with a metal thread through that, which you don't feel, but it basically conducts through to the footbed. And then we have stitching in the footbed, which is against your foot. And so it works if you've got socks on as well. If socks are generally quite thin, or you perspire slightly, and it's all linked up. But in fact, the shoes to be grounded already kind of exist in a slightly different format in the safety world, because people need to be grounded if you're working certain elements of electronics or on semiconductors or on explosives, and you need to be grounded so you don't build up a static charge. So it's kind of a process of reverse engineering that and put it into a performance shoe, and making sure that people couldn't feel any of the different materials we use. And because of that, there's testing standards to check how conductive the shoe is. So they have this process where they basically fill the shoe with metal balls and then put it onto a metal surface, and they can measure the resistance between where your foot would be and where the ground would be. And so human skin is normally between 1 to 10 to up to 100,000 ohms of resistance, and our shoes to achieve the standard need to be under 100,000 ohms, and typically they're about 10,000, 5,000, so they're like well within the range of human skin. So it's almost as good. Obviously, if you can be barefoot, then absolutely go barefoot. But it's you're not really giving up anything in terms of the conductivity when you're wearing the shoes. So that's really exciting, and that's something that we obviously want to keep on progressing that feature as well, but it's already performing really well. So it's great to hear your feedback, and we've received that from a lot of customers. It's like so rewarding to hear how they've felt more present, obviously, and maybe behave differently, but like just actually genuinely feeling differences in how they feel whilst wearing the shoes. It's like that was the whole aim of creating the company and doing what we're doing. So it's really pleasing to hear that.
I have to say, like, it keeps coming into my brain about how, so I teach a lot of older people who just do not have any interest in taking off their shoes and socks, you know, and so it's just like a bunch of, young hippies telling them to put their feet in the grass. But if you could, I could think about my older aunts and uncles and stuff, like where we could get them in a pair of shoes where they could experience something like that, to just go for a walk or something and have, because I do think that there are hungry for that. And I think there's something to be said for fall risk and all those. There's a lot of exploration. And I think there's a lot of, there's a demographic that could really, benefit from that, even outside of just like our natural footwear sort of ecosystem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a whole like range
I've
of customers, I think, and people that are interested. There's like real elite athletes that talk about grounding. So you've got over here we have football, soccer, depending where you are in the world, and there's a player called
Yes.
Erling Haaland who's basically redefined how to score goals. He's amazing, and he's really into like holistic health. So getting early light into his eyes and blue light blocking glasses and all sort of thing, but like he really talks about grounding a lot. So you've got elite athletes, you've got lots of people in the sort of health and wellness space. So there's lots of like pockets, different
Mhm.
communities, and I think it's becoming more widespread, the information about it. And I completely agree. Like it's not just for people that want to perform more or be a bit like healthier, but it's like for elderly people where it's genuinely a struggle to get outdoors. There are other things. There are grounding sheets and mats and things like that. So there are those opportunities whilst you're indoors. But I think if possible, if you can be outdoors and benefiting as well, then you get so much more from it, don't you? Because of
Mhm.
the everything that's all the good things that come from the natural light, and just looking at natural things is restorative to your like mind and everything like that. So if people can be outdoors safely and experience the benefits, then that's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I just had a question, and it just popped into my mind. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this out right, but like you have these two models of shoes, right? So you essentially have a traditional runner, and then you have this more natural shoe that you're evolving. And my question comes around like your customer base. Like you have your hands in both worlds. Are they starting to, like, I assume with a traditional runner, some people may not have ever even like dipped their toe, pardon the pun, into like the natural footwear realm. So like you have a unique opportunity to be dealing with like a lot of different populations. And do they cross over, or like how does that work? Like who are your shoes designed for? Do people have a curiosity about, because there's just two models, so it makes it very clear about what your choices are. So you have
Yeah,
the Revive, which is the shoe that I've tried, and then the Recharge. Is that correct? That's the
yeah, that's right.
traditional
Yeah,
style runner?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's definitely a one-way street. You'll be pleased to know. I don't think too many people go like from the actual shoe towards the more cushioned shoe. So that's, I think, exciting. I think the sort of the consistent thing for our customer base is people that are interested in their like holistic health. So there's all different types of people, different age groups, but like they're all. I think there's like consistent interest in diet and lifestyle and just trying to optimize health. So that's the real consistent thing. And I think that we always plan to do a more natural shoe, and we've like evolved and learned more about that through the process. But we've got a lot of feedback as well from our community that they wanted that. So when we launched our first style, we had a great reaction to it. People have really enjoyed that shoe. But we had a lot of people say, "I would love to get some grounding shoes from you, but I wish they were barefoot or natural style shoes." And so I think that is a a real feature of our community that they want to do everything they can to be sort of optimizing their health. So that's, yeah, it's definitely been a consistent thing we've heard. And I think that
I
there's
have to say, oh,
sorry, I was just gonna say that,
I'm
like, I
sorry.
think that people
I
are
just
gonna
am
we've got a delay. So yeah, I
you
think
go.
that hopefully with these shoes, they give an opportunity for people to transition, because it's not easy, like we've discussed, and it takes time. And I think for the pure running community, like, that a lot of them are so into it, and it's such a big part of their lives in terms of, community, mental health. And so for them, maybe cutting back on miles to do a transition, it's going to take a little while, isn't always easy. And hopefully we help to make it that little bit easier, because it's a product that's a bit more forgiving. So you still have those features. You've got the width, it allows your big toe to articulate properly, your toes to splay, all the features that you'd expect, but there's a little bit of cushioning, a little bit of give. So hopefully it makes that a little bit easier. We'll be able to get a few more of those runners over the line. But yeah, it's definitely a crossover, and it's definitely
And even if, I
knocks up
mean,
the curiosity.
yeah, and truly, even if not, I mean, the fact that we can all like that the shoes can exist, two different, distinctly different styles of shoes in one website, one ecosystem, I think is really important. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, of course, we want all people's foot health to be better, and we want as many opportunities as possible for people to explore that. But ultimately, it's a matter of personal choice, right? So um, I just think it's fascinating that there's two models, and that there's that choice, and there is the possibility for overlap and education, and I think that is a real opportunity. I I wanted to ask you about how you came up with the name Bahé for your company.
The naming is the hardest bit of creating a company, for sure. I think of all the product design, development, whatever, it's the picking the name's the tricky bit, because it means so much. And before you've even started, it's like, it's just a word, isn't it? And it develops its meaning as you progress. But actually, the word Bahé means flow in Hindi. So it's something that really, I think, sums up what we're trying to do in terms of the electrical flow from the earth into your body, but also being in the flow state when you're out in nature or you're running and you just feel like in the moment. So it's something that really, like, encapsulates what we want to achieve in terms of that flow between earth, body, and mind with the product.
Mm. It flows out of the mouth really nice too. Has a nice flow.
We
Literally.
get a few different pronunciations of
um,
it, actually, because we get a few, but you've got it just spot
what
on,
are
so
some
that's
of
good.
them?
Bahi,
Yeah,
the
let's hear
like,
a couple of the.
yeah, Bahi comes up more than Bahé, and yeah, we get a few, but it's we're
Yeah, that's
it's
funny.
good to be saying it rather than just writing it so
Bahi.
people can hear it. Yeah.
It is true. Yeah, that's true. Um, and then let's talk a bit. Oh, before we go on, I wanted to say I had something I wanted to say, but I forgot what it was. So let's move on to sizing and shipping. So, how would you recommend that people? It looks like there's a guide on the website for sizing, or how would you recommend people measure and size for the shoes that they want to buy from your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So we would say our shoes fit true to size, but shoe sizing is like the Wild West, unfortunately. Every brand seems to be a little bit different, and they've got their own, yeah, variations. So we definitely recommend to go onto their website and look at the size guide. So we have a printable size guide on there, just to make sure that you get the scale right, because we've got a little, like, small ruler on the base, so you can just make sure you haven't scaled it when you print it off. But the printout is the shape of the footbed, and so your foot should fit comfortably on that, and the amount of space you have in front of your toes should be what you're comfortable with in your shoes. So you can, yeah, print them out, put your foot on it, follow the instructions on there, and that's really helpful. And you can always take the footbed out of your existing shoes and compare that, so that's a really nice way to do it. So yeah, we definitely recommend that, and it makes the process easier for everyone.
Definitely. Definitely do that, people. It's a little extra step, but it sure does save a lot of time and energy on the back end. And how about shipping? You ship, you're located where and ship where?
Yeah, so we're located in the UK. We ship worldwide, so probably about half our customers in the US, but we've shipped probably about 30 to 40 countries already, all over the world, really. So it's no problem for us to ship anywhere. Obviously, as we grow as a brand, we'd like to have different distribution centers around, but that's going to be a little way off. We're definitely working on that to try and make the process as easy as possible for customers. But as a small company, it takes a little while to get to that stage. But it's definitely a plan. But yeah, wherever people are, there we'll get the shoes to them. So that's not a problem.
Wonderful, thank you. And then just around feedback loops, just to swing back to being a small company. And one of the things that is not possible from my personal experience is giving feedback to a company in order to help evolve a product. And the fact that, I mean, you've said this a number of times, that you had started with this shoe, and then people asked you, like personally asked you, like, could we have this other thing, whether it's grounding technology or a barefoot shaped shoe, and then you were able to respond to your customers' requests. And I think that there's something really just so incredibly like refreshing about being able to, metaphorically pick up the phone and call your your shoe designer and say, is it possible for this? So that was one last thing I really wanted to give a shout out about, how you're listening, and it's possible to do that when you have a small company like what Bahé is. And then I
Yeah.
guess just wanted to close by asking you of your personal definition of health, which we like to do.
Um, well, I think for me, it's probably about living as naturally as possible, which I think ties in nicely with what we're trying to do as a company. But yeah, I think the more natural, more simple you can live your life, the more in touch you can be with yourself, how you really truly feel. I think it's really key. Um, Being a shoe designer, I'm quite inclined to link everything back to shoes, unfortunately. But I think it's really
Of
interesting when
course.
you read reviews that people do of like super shoes and this sort of thing, and people, it's almost like they tune out of themselves and into the shoe. Like, oh, I could really feel this engineered mesh, and I could feel this. And it's like, well, that shouldn't be how things are. It should be that the products you wear and the things you eat make you feel like you, like make your body and your mind perform as it should. So I think, yeah, being able to live as naturally, being in touch with nature, being in tune with what you eat and how that makes you feel, what you wear, how that makes you feel. And so I think that it ties in beautifully to what you guys do, because it's a really like re-engaging with your body and how it should work naturally. So yeah, I really admire what you guys are doing, and I think it feels like it's clearly a lot more than just foot strengthening and movement. It's like it's a philosophical thing about
Yeah.
how you live. So yeah, I think just living that in a much more natural way is good for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And we've said for many years at the Foot Collective that a foot conversation is a whole body conversation. And so, Alex, thank you for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I will hopefully look forward to doing it again sometime in the future.
It's great. Yeah, thank you so much. It's been great.
Thanks for tuning in to the Restore to Explore podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, we'd really appreciate you leaving a review wherever you're listening. That's the best way to support us and to help us reach more people. If you're after more free TFC education or training, looking for any of our TFC tools, natural footwear discounts, or you want specialized guidance on your foot health journey from a trusted TFC health professional, head to thefootcollective.com. All of the important links are in the show notes of the episode.